I never imagined betrayal could wear a soft voice and pearls. It was supposed to be a celebration. My cousin Riley had just graduated law school. And my parents were throwing one of their signature backyard events, string lights, catered hors d'oeuvres, jazz playing from the Bluetooth speakers mounted by the rose trellis. Ethan, my boyfriend of 3 years, had gone inside to grab us drinks. When he didn't return after 10 minutes, I went looking for him, my sandals silent on the hardwood floors. I wasn't expecting to hear my name, certainly not followed by the sentence that would unravel my entire world. "She's too soft, Ethan," my mother's voice drifted through the cracked kitchen door. Her tone was composed, like she was discussing a wine pairing. "Vanessa is stronger. She's a better match for you, for your career, your future." I froze. My heart dropped so fast it felt like I'd missed a stair. Inside the kitchen, my mother was arranging macarons on a glass platter like she hadn't just detonated a bomb. Ethan stood beside her, holding 2 glasses of sangria, one of which was meant for me. He looked stunned, but not offended. He didn't speak. He didn't say no. "She's my girlfriend," he said finally, weakly. "We've been together a long time." My mother waved it off like a fruit fly. "And what do you have to show for it?" "Isabel's sweet, of course, but sweetness won't build a future. Vanessa just made managing partner at 29. Isabel is, still decorating yoga studios, isn't she?" The jab cut deep. My interior design business was modest, sure, but it was mine. Every space I transformed had my fingerprint, my soul. But in my mother's world, if it didn't come with billable hours and a corner office, it wasn't real work. "Vanessa's had her eye on you for years," she said, lowering her voice slightly. "She just didn't want to get between you two. But I know she'd make you a great partner, in every sense." I stepped back before I could hear Ethan's answer. I didn't need to. His silence spoke volumes. That night, I sat through the rest of the party as if my body was there but my spirit had floated several feet above. Vanessa clinked glasses with Ethan across the yard. My mother made rounds, smiling at guests, pausing occasionally to whisper things in Ethan's ear that made him laugh. I kept smiling too. That was my first mistake. The shift started subtly after that night. Ethan began comparing me to Vanessa, her discipline, her intellect, how she really knew what she wanted. He started bumping into her at networking events he never mentioned. One night, I saw her contact name on his phone while he was in the shower. They'd had lunch. He hadn't told me. When I asked him about it, he laughed. "She's your sister, Izzy. It'd be weird if we didn't talk." I started dreading Sunday dinners. Ethan and Vanessa shared inside jokes. My mother beamed every time they were near each other. I, meanwhile, felt like a misplaced place card, technically there, but clearly in the wrong seat. My best friend Camille noticed first. "He doesn't look at you the same way anymore," she said gently after yet another awkward dinner. "And your mom, she's playing puppeteer. Don't let her pull your strings." I should have listened. I should have confronted Ethan that night. But I was still clinging to the version of him who used to surprise me with Thai food and tell me my laugh made him feel like home. The final blow came 2 months later. I bought us tickets to a design exhibit Ethan had mentioned wanting to see. He'd been distant, so I thought it might be a nice gesture, a reminder of us. I let myself into his apartment. Still technically ours since we were planning to move in together. The first thing I noticed was the smell, Chanel No. 5. My sister's perfume. A trail of clothing led from the front door to the bedroom. I remember every item like evidence in a courtroom: a navy blazer, a silk scarf, Ethan's belt unbuckled on the hallway floor. The door was ajar. I heard a soft laugh, Vanessa's laugh. And then the sound stopped. I stepped inside. Vanessa was in Ethan's bed, wrapped in his sheets like she owned them. Her dark hair spilled across his bare chest. Ethan's arm was around her until he saw me. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just let the tickets slip from my fingers. They fluttered to the floor like confetti for a party I was never invited to. Ethan stammered. Vanessa didn't even bother to cover herself. You were going to find out eventually, she said, flatly. Better this way. This wasn't a mistake. It was a plan. A plan my own mother had planted and watered. And as I stood in the ruins of everything I'd trusted, I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't stay here. I left Portland before the sun rose. No note. No goodbye. No confrontation. Just a car full of sketchbooks, my battered laptop, 2 duffel bags of clothes. And a heart so hollow it felt like it echoed when I breathed. Camille offered her spare bedroom for as long as I needed, but I knew I had to get out of Oregon entirely. Every sidewalk, every bookstore, every restaurant felt haunted. I couldn't walk into a coffee shop without wondering if Ethan and Vanessa had sat there. Couldn't drive down certain streets without remembering the way Ethan used to sing off-key to the radio with the windows down. So I pointed my car southeast. 4 hours. I drove with no destination, just a single command looping in my head: get away. By the time I pulled into Denver, the sky was dark and my gas tank was almost empty. It wasn't a city I'd ever planned on calling home, but something about the skyline felt honest. Gritty. Like it didn't pretend to be anything it wasn't. Maybe that's what I needed, a place as raw as I felt. I found a cheap motel on the edge of downtown. The room smelled like a mix of old cigarettes and lemon cleaner. But the sheets were clean and the door locked. It was enough. I let myself cry that night. Just once. Face buried in a borrowed pillow, sobbing until my throat hurt and my ribs ached. But when morning came, I stood in front of the mirror and whispered, that's the last tear I shed for people who didn't choose me. And I meant it. The next few days were survival mode. I scoured job boards and coffee shops, refreshed my resume, rewrote my design portfolio to highlight the most versatile, corporate-friendly projects I had. Interior design gigs were scarce, especially for someone with no local connections and no firm backing her. I applied for everything: receptionist, admin assistant, retail clerk. Anything that would pay rent. 12 rejections in 4 days. A few polite "we'll keep your resume on file" emails. Mostly, silence. I started to question everything. Was I just playing pretend with my little creative career? Had Mom been right? Had I been deluding myself into thinking I could turn paint swatches and Pinterest boards into a real livelihood? Then came the 13th listing. Administrative assistant, Morris and Landon Real Estate Development. A boutique firm focused on eco-conscious urban design. Interior design experience a plus. Passion for aesthetics and organization strongly encouraged. Something about the words pulled at me. Maybe it was the fact that they weren't asking for someone to just answer phones and file things. They were asking for vision. Structure. Taste. I sent my application in with trembling fingers and went to the interview 2 days later in my best department store dress, hair ironed straight. Hands ice cold. The receptionist led me to a waiting area where another candidate, a sleek brunette in designer heels, sat scrolling through her phone. I felt like a high schooler at a Harvard mixer. Miss Hartley? A voice broke my spiral. A woman with sharp cheekbones and frameless glasses stood in the hallway. I'm Rachel from HR. There's been a small change. The assistant role was filled internally this morning. My stomach dropped. But one of our associates is looking for a new EA. He specifically requested someone with a creative background. Would you be open to meeting with him? Would I? I would have mopped the floors if it meant a paycheck. She led me through a bright, airy office full of exposed brick and glass walls to a cluttered corner suite. Inside, a man in a rolled-up shirt and worn jeans sat at a desk buried under floor plans and half-eaten takeout. He looked up and smiled. Caleb Morris, he said, standing to shake my hand. His grip was warm, solid. Excuse the mess. Our annual reports are due and my last assistant quit mid-project. Isabel Hartley, I replied, trying to match his confidence. I'm organized, efficient, and caffeinated. I can start tomorrow. He chuckled. That's a good start. He glanced down at my resume. Interior designer? Yes, I said, bracing myself for the usual dismissal. But he just nodded. We work with a lot of designers. Having one on the admin side could be useful. Tell me something, why the switch? I hesitated. I could have spun a story about career shifts or wanting to explore new industries. Instead, I said the truest thing I'd ever said aloud. Because sometimes, starting over means burning the map of your old life and sketching a new one from scratch. He blinked. Then smiled, not the polite interview kind, but the real, surprised kind. I like that. He didn't ask about my past again. He just said, "Can you be here at 8 tomorrow?" And just like that, I was no longer unemployed. I walked out of that office into the Denver sunlight, the city unfamiliar and humming around me. I didn't know it yet. But I had just stepped into the very first draft of the life I was meant to build. The first few days at Morris and Landon were chaos. Controlled chaos, maybe, but chaos nonetheless. Caleb wasn't the kind of boss who barked orders. He moved fast, talked faster, and lived off of black coffee and raw ideas. His desk was a hurricane of sketches, development proposals, and sticky notes scrawled in messy block letters. My job, apparently, was to turn the hurricane into a blueprint. It wasn't glamorous. I took calls, scheduled meetings, reordered printer ink, and sorted through a digital graveyard of outdated spreadsheets and files labeled things like final_v3. But slowly, I started noticing patterns. Missed follow-ups. Disorganized outreach. A lack of structure beneath Caleb's brilliant, but scattershot, vision. He had the ideas. He just didn't have the systems. So I built them. I reorganized his calendar, color-coded his project folders, digitized all the paperwork into a shared drive. Then I went a step further, created a client mood board library, matching interior aesthetics to project pitches. On a whim. I even redesigned the visual layout of a proposal for an eco-condo development he'd been struggling to finalize. He noticed. Fast. Did you redesign the Oak Ridge proposal? He asked one Thursday afternoon, flipping through the new draft with raised eyebrows. I streamlined the visuals, I admitted, nervous. Thought it might help sell the energy efficiency angle better. He looked up slowly. It's 10 times better than what I had. Seriously. Where the hell were you 6 months ago? I smiled. A real one. That night, he sent me a thank you email. Not a generic corporate great job, but a short, sincere note that ended with, "You've got an eye. And a brain I can trust. Don't think I don't see it." I sat in my cramped sublet that evening, rereading those words. No one had ever said something like that to me, not even Ethan. Not even when I was designing our future apartment from floor plan to pillowcases. Caleb saw me. Over the next few weeks, our rhythm evolved. He stopped micromanaging and started delegating real tasks. We brainstormed layouts for upcoming builds over late-night takeout. He started asking my opinion on things that went far beyond office logistics, color palettes, eco-branding language, target demographics. It was professional. But under the surface, something else flickered. Sometimes, I caught him looking at me like he was studying the answer to a question he hadn't asked yet. I'd pretend not to notice. I wasn't ready for anything more than trust, and maybe a little peace. Still, the connection was undeniable. One particularly long Friday. We were the last two in the office again. I was triple-checking permit files while Caleb paced, talking through a new project idea for a community-focused, zero-waste microhousing development. And I wanted to feel like home, he said, fingers tapping against a desk lamp. Not just look like sustainability. I want it to feel lived in. Beautiful. Real. I looked up from the forms. Then stop designing for investors. Start designing for the people who'll raise kids there. Plant gardens there. Grow old there. He paused. Blinked. Then let out a breathy laugh. Damn. You should be running this company. Give me 6 months, I joked. He smiled, slow and surprised, like it wasn't impossible. Later that night, as I packed up my bag, he handed me a container. Stir fry from the place down the block. You haven't eaten, he said simply. And you've earned it. It was such a small gesture. But it made something shift in me. I remembered Ethan buying food because he had to. Caleb noticed because he saw me, the work, the stress, the long hours. And he respected it. The next Monday, HR informed me that my job title was changing from executive assistant to junior project consultant. The pay bump wasn't huge, but the message was clear: I wasn't just support staff anymore. I was part of the vision. When I told Camille over FaceTime, she squealed so loudly she scared her cat off the bed. Denver agrees with you, she said. You look lighter. Maybe I was. I still missed home sometimes, or at least the version of it I used to believe in. But here, in this unfinished new life, I was building something from scraps. From the ashes of everything I'd lost. And this time it had nothing to do with pleasing my mother, impressing a boyfriend, or proving I was enough. This time I was doing it for me. It started with a brown envelope and a trembling voice. One Tuesday morning, Caleb dropped a thick file on my desk. Don't open it here, he said, eyes flicking toward the glass-walled hallway. Come by the terrace after lunch. The envelope sat in my drawer like it was ticking. I tried to focus: emails, blueprint revisions, a client call, but my mind kept circling back to that manila folder. By noon, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my coat and climbed to the rooftop terrace where Caleb often escaped when the noise got too loud. He was already there, coffee in hand, staring out at the snow-tipped Rockies in the distance. For a moment, we didn't say anything. Then he turned to me. Open it. Inside, a business plan. Titled in clean black font. Verdant Structures, a sustainable design and development firm. Page after page of vision statements, market analysis, and branding concepts. At the end, scribbled in Caleb's unmistakably messy handwriting. This isn't just a project. It's a leap. And I don't want to take it alone. Be my co-founder. I looked up, breath caught halfway in my throat. You want me to start a company with you? He nodded. I've been sitting on this plan for 3 years. But I've never had the right person to build it with. Until now. I should have said no. I should have listed all the reasons it was too soon, too risky. Too insane. I wasn't even 30. I didn't have an MBA. I'd never started a business before. But instead, I said, tell me everything. So he did. We sat out there for 2 hours. Mapping out his vision. A company that didn't just build green buildings but made sustainable living aspirational, modern, affordable, and beautiful. Homes that felt like sanctuaries. Communities designed around connection, not just square footage. It was everything I didn't know I'd been craving. Purpose with a backbone. Creativity with impact. You're serious about this? I said at the end. Dead serious, he replied. But I'm not doing it unless you're in. I can handle finance, strategy, growth. But you're the soul of this. The systems. The design. The human side. It felt surreal, like someone had read the life I'd dreamed of in secret and handed it to me, bound in cardstock and courage. I'll need time, I whispered. You've got 48 hours. He said, but he smiled when he said it. That night, I laid everything out on my apartment floor, the plan, my savings account login, my scribbled budget notes. The rent notice I'd nearly forgotten was due. I could play it safe. Stay as a rising employee in an established company. Or I could risk it all for something that finally felt like mine. Camille texted me, "What's the worst that could happen?" I replied, "I lose everything." She wrote back 2 minutes later, "Or you build the best version of yourself." The next morning, I walked into Caleb's office, heart hammering in my chest. "When do we start?" He didn't say anything at first. Just stood, came around the desk, and pulled me into the kind of hug that said more than any meeting ever could. "Right now," he said. "Right now, Isabel." The weeks that followed were a blur of permits, brand meetings, sleepless nights, and pitch presentations. We worked from our apartments, coffee shops, sometimes even my car when Wi-Fi failed. We named the firm Verdant Living. And with each blueprint, each client pitch, something inside me healed. And then, the shift. It was a Friday. We were sitting in Caleb's living room, surrounded by half-eaten Thai food containers and samples of reclaimed wood. I was sketching a rooftop garden concept on a napkin when he paused. Eyes fixed on me like he was seeing me for the first time, really seeing me. "Do you ever stop creating?" he asked. "Only when I sleep," I laughed. He didn't laugh back. He just whispered, "God, I admire you." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was electric. He reached across the couch, fingertips brushing mine. "We're building a life together, you know. Not just a business." I didn't flinch. For the first time in years, I didn't pull away. I leaned in. He kissed me, soft and tentative, like asking a question he already knew the answer to. When we pulled apart, I said the only thing that made sense. "I didn't just find work here, Caleb. I found something real." His forehead rested against mine. "Good. Because I'm not going anywhere." That night, I lay in bed wide awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering how in the world this all came from the ashes of that life I thought I couldn't survive. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the silence. It hadn't ended me. It had redirected me. And now, I was building something stronger. Something lasting. 16 months into launching Verdant Living, we were finally breathing. Not gasping. Not scrambling. Just breathing. We had 3 developments in progress, a solid pipeline of eco-conscious clients, and enough momentum that Caleb and I could, occasionally, sleep more than 4 hours a night. We moved into a proper office, still modest, but ours. And we hired our first employees. 2 junior designers and an assistant who reminded me painfully of who I used to be. We even talked about taking a vacation. A real one. Somewhere with sand and signal loss. And then the email came. Subject line, acquisition proposal, Summit Group Holdings. I read it 3 times before calling Caleb into my office. "Is this a prank?" I asked, blinking at the 5-page attachment. Caleb scanned it, then smiled slowly, the kind of smile he got when something big was unfolding. "It's real," he said. "They've been sniffing around sustainable development firms for a year. Looks like we're on their radar." Summit Group was a real estate titan, national scale, unlimited capital, and a notorious reputation for either elevating or devouring the businesses they acquired. But the proposal was, surprisingly thoughtful. They wanted to absorb Verdant Living as their sustainability flagship, let us operate with creative autonomy, and keep both Caleb and me in executive leadership roles. "It's flattering," I said carefully. "But risky." "True," Caleb agreed. "But if they're serious about changing their environmental approach, we could be the ones to shape that shift." We requested a meeting. The following week, we were ushered into a sleek downtown high-rise, all chrome and minimalist furniture. We were greeted by Summit's regional VP and a team of advisors. The meeting was smooth, too smooth. I kept waiting for the catch. Then, during a coffee break, someone handed me a personnel portfolio, part of the transition plan if the acquisition went through. My fingers froze at page 6. Ethan Brooks, Senior Project Architect, Philadelphia Division. For a moment, the conference room buzz faded into a dull roar. I stared at the photo on the page, familiar eyes, familiar jawline. His job title sat beneath his name like a cruel punchline. Caleb, who'd been reviewing another section, noticed the color drain from my face. What is it? I passed him the page. He read the name. His eyebrows rose. Is that? Yep, I whispered. My ex. The one who left me for my sister. Caleb didn't say anything for a moment. Then he gently closed the file. We don't need this deal, he said. Say the word and I'll walk away. His immediate loyalty nearly undid me. No, I said after a moment. We'll hear them out. I'm not running from shadows anymore. He nodded. But something in his jaw tightened. Later that week, we received the full client roster Summit wanted us to integrate with. And there it was, nestled under legal partnerships, Vanessa Hartley, Senior Partner, Hartley and Brooks Law Group. My stomach turned. Not just Ethan. Not just my sister. Them. Together. In business. Still. I sat alone in the office that night, staring out at the Denver skyline, heart pounding. I hadn't spoken their names aloud in over a year. Hadn't thought about them, not really, since the day I left Oregon with nothing but a car full of sketches and bruises nobody could see. Now they were back. Uninvited. Unavoidable. Caleb found me there just after 9 p.m., carrying 2 hot chocolates and a look of quiet concern. You don't have to do this, he said gently. Handing me a mug. I mean it. I know, I replied, voice low. But maybe I need to. He sat beside me, waiting. So I told him everything. Not the edited version. The full story, the overheard conversation, the lies, the earring, the betrayal, the look on Vanessa's face when I walked in on them and she didn't even flinch. And finally, my mother. Standing in our childhood kitchen, arranging flowers like she hadn't just gutted me. I thought leaving was the hard part, I finished. But it turns out, it was surviving afterward. Caleb didn't offer pity. He didn't say I'm sorry or they didn't deserve you. He just said, now I understand why you fight so hard to build something real. Silence stretched between us. Warm and weighty. Then, quietly, he added, maybe it's time they saw who you are now. I turned to him. You think I should confront them? He shook his head. Not confront. Just, exist. Let them see the life you built without them. The idea felt impossible. And yet, a flicker of something sparked in my chest. Not revenge. Revelation. They'd never expect it, I murmured. Exactly. He said. They expected you to crumble. But here you are, thriving. That night, we made a decision. If Summit wanted us, they would come to our table. We'd host a corporate gala in Aspen to announce the acquisition, introduce the new Sustainable Leadership Division, and celebrate Verdant's growth. The guest list would include Summit's regional leadership and their legal team. Which meant Ethan. And Vanessa. And if the Philadelphia team flew in? There was a good chance Diane Hartley, my mother, would tag along. And for the first time since I'd left Portland, the thought didn't make me feel like hiding. It made me feel ready. I used to think strength looked like steel. Now I knew better. Strength was velvet-lined and quiet. It was in the calm click of a keyboard, the silent decisions behind a guest list. The deliberate sip of coffee while your past loomed on the page before you, and you didn't flinch. Planning the gala became my armor. Caleb and I booked the Aspen Glass House. A marvel of architectural beauty nestled between snow-dusted evergreens. Its transparent walls reflected back not just the surrounding nature, but every bit of intention behind our brand: openness, balance, design with nothing to hide. I want everything sustainable, local, intentional, I told our planner. No excess, no showboating. Just honest elegance. She grinned. Sounds like your brand. I smiled, but inside, I knew better. It wasn't just my brand I was designing for. It was the message I wanted to send. To them. Vanessa. Ethan. Diane. As the guest list was finalized, Caleb slid a printed copy across the kitchen island one evening. I stared at the names highlighted in gold: the Philadelphia legal team, the architectural liaisons. The optional invites Summit had suggested. There they were. Ethan Brooks, Architecture Compliance Officer. Vanessa Hartley, Legal Consultant, Hartley and Brooks. Diane Hartley, Strategic Advisor. East Coast Expansion, optional. You don't have to do this, Caleb said again. He always left that door open for me. Always let me choose. I know, I said quietly. But I'm not sending them an invitation to spite them. I'm sending it because I've stopped hiding. So I did. I wrote the cards myself. Simple, cream stationery. Elegant typography. Each invitation was paired with a personal handwritten note. Looking forward to sharing the world I built. Isabel Morris. I kept my last name, Hartley, on legal documents. But in my heart, and now in my signature, I was Isabel Morris. Not just because of Caleb, but because I had rebuilt myself, and that name carried the blueprint of the new life I'd constructed. The responses came in a week later. Vanessa RSVP'd with Ethan as her guest, her email curt and professionally worded. I could hear her voice behind every punctuation mark: efficient, clipped, rehearsed. Like this was another deposition. But it was the third envelope that made my hand tremble. My mother's handwriting. I would be delighted to attend. It's time we reconnect. With pride. Diane Hartley. With pride. As if the last 5 years were a footnote. As if she hadn't orchestrated the greatest emotional betrayal of my life like it was a networking favor. I stared at the words long after the envelope had slipped to the floor. She was coming. They were coming. And I needed to be ready. Not just in logistics, in presence. The next 3 weeks were a blur of fittings, rehearsals, menu planning, speeches. I reviewed every floral arrangement, every lighting fixture, every plate of locally sourced appetizers. I became obsessed with the details, not out of vanity, but control. Because this time I controlled the narrative. Caleb watched me with careful eyes, never questioning. Just occasionally grounding me. Do you want to talk about it? He asked one night, finding me pacing in our home office at 1 a.m., practicing my opening remarks aloud for the 5th time. No. I sighed. I just want to be unshakable. You already are, he said, crossing the room and wrapping his arms around me from behind. But even unshakable women are allowed to tremble a little first. His words melted something inside me. The part that still feared my mother's disapproval. The part that still sometimes wondered if Vanessa had won. I looked up at him. This isn't about revenge. Right? Not if you don't want it to be. I let out a shaky breath. I want it to be closure. Then it will be, he said simply. The last item on my checklist was the dress. It took me 8 stores and 2 silent breakdowns in 2 bright fitting rooms before I found it, a deep emerald green gown, structured silk with a soft train, open back, and high neckline that made me feel like a force of nature and a sculpture all at once. When I stepped out of the dressing room, the boutique owner gasped. This dress doesn't wear you, she said. You wear it. I knew, instantly, it was the one. It didn't scream for attention. It whispered power. The night before the gala, I stood in front of the mirror in our bedroom, hair pinned. Makeup light but precise, the emerald fabric hugging my curves like it was custom designed for the woman I had become. "You're quiet," Caleb said from the doorway, holding a glass of champagne. I met his eyes in the reflection. "Just thinking." "About them?" I shook my head. "About me." He walked forward and kissed the top of my shoulder. "Then you're already winning." I turned and looked at him fully. "Tomorrow, I won't need to say a word to prove anything." "No," he agreed. "They'll feel it." The Aspen glasshouse glowed like a crystal lantern in the mountain dusk. Snow glittered on the pine branches outside as guests arrived in clusters, their silhouettes reflected in the floor-to-ceiling glass walls. Inside, soft jazz drifted through the warm air, mingling with the scent of eucalyptus and white roses. Recycled paper place cards shimmered beneath glass centerpieces filled with native greenery and tiny solar lights. This was our world, a seamless blend of elegance and intention. And tonight, I would walk through it not as the girl they once underestimated, but as the woman they never saw coming. Caleb stood beside me at the main entrance, tux tailored, hands calm but firm on mine. As we welcomed guests, investors, partners, architects, developers, I noticed the glances they gave me. Some curious, some respectful, some unmistakably surprised. And then I saw them. Vanessa arrived first, her hair in a sleek chignon, lips crimson, gown black and glittering like starlight. Ethan followed half a step behind, dressed impeccably, his expression unreadable. They paused at the threshold, taking in the grandeur, the atmosphere, the crowd. Vanessa's eyes scanned the room like a chessboard. Calculating. Expecting. And then they landed on me. For a moment. Her poise cracked, the faintest flicker of disbelief. Ethan, too, hesitated. His gaze swept from my dress to Caleb's hand resting confidently at the small of my back. He blinked. I smiled, cool. Composed, complete. They approached slowly. "Isabel," Vanessa said, voice silk over steel. "This is impressive." "Welcome," I said evenly. "Glad you made it." She hesitated. Perhaps expecting something more effusive, some plea for forgiveness or an awkward laugh to break the ice. I gave her none of it. "And this must be your husband," she added, turning to Caleb with the sort of charm reserved for boardrooms and opponents. "Vanessa Hartley. I'm Isabel's sister." Caleb didn't flinch. "Ah. The famous Vanessa. I've heard, fragments." Ethan extended a hand. "Ethan Brooks. We've." "Yes," Caleb said, shaking it with perfect professionalism. "We're aware." Vanessa's lips tightened at the bluntness. Ethan glanced at me. Perhaps waiting for a signal, some acknowledgement that we shared a history. I gave him none. Just a small nod. Polite. Distant. Then she appeared, Diane Hartley. In navy satin and a vintage pearl necklace I hadn't seen in years. She moved through the crowd like she still expected the world to rearrange for her. She reached me with open arms. "Isabel. My dear. Look at you." "I am," I replied. The hug she offered never landed. I kept my hands folded in front of me. Her smile faltered. "I must say, this event is breathtaking. You've really made something of yourself." Her tone was performative. Like she was taking credit simply by having shown up. "I built something," I corrected. "With someone who saw me, not who they wanted me to be." Caleb gave me a small squeeze behind the back, a silent anchor. Diane tilted her head. "Well. Sometimes daughters need a little push." I looked her straight in the eyes. "And sometimes they thrive the moment they're no longer being pushed." Before she could reply, the MC announced the opening remarks. Caleb stepped up to the podium, and a hush fell over the room. He spoke eloquently, about sustainability, about purpose, about building futures with meaning, not just profits. Then came the key announcement. Tonight, we officially welcome Summit Group's East Coast partners into the Verdant family. It is with great pride that we announce a new sustainable leadership division, led by people who understand not just construction, but community. He gestured toward me. And no one embodies that better than Isabel Morris, co-founder and heart of this company. Applause filled the room. And from where I stood, I saw it clearly, the moment Vanessa's smile slipped. The moment Ethan's shoulders dropped. The moment my mother blinked with something eerily close to shock. They hadn't just underestimated me. They had erased me, and were now standing in the middle of what I'd built, uninvited, unprepared. After the speech, I floated through the crowd, accepting compliments, speaking with partners. I saw them watching, the three of them, as team leaders, clients, even press gravitated toward me. Later, near the dessert table, Diane approached again. "I always knew you had potential," she said lightly. "You told me I was impractical," I replied. "That art was a waste. That design wasn't a real career." Her lips parted slightly, but I held up a hand. "It's all right. I stopped needing your approval years ago." She tried to recover. "Maybe I was too harsh. But I pushed because I wanted more for you." "No," I said. "You wanted control." Behind her, Vanessa approached, her gaze sharp but hesitant. "Your husband is impressive," she said. "You've done well." I tilted my head. "We built this together. That's what real partnerships do." The words landed like a quiet slap. "And Ethan?" He simply nodded at me once, something between apology and defeat, and faded into the crowd. By midnight, they had all left. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't need to. As the final guests trickled out and the jazz faded into soft echoes, Caleb found me near the candlelit windows. "How do you feel?" he asked. I turned to him slowly. Like I finally stepped out of a room I didn't realize I'd been trapped in for years. He kissed my temple, eyes warm. "You didn't burn bridges tonight, Isabel." "No," I said softly. "I outgrew them." The day after the gala, Aspen felt eerily quiet, like the world had exhaled with me. Caleb and I checked out of the hotel just after noon. Snow was still falling in soft curtains outside the windows as we loaded the car. My emerald gown was neatly folded in a garment bag, but the feeling it gave me, that quiet, sovereign confidence, still clung to my skin like silk. On the way home, we didn't say much. There wasn't a need to. I had said everything I needed to say, without saying much at all. Back in Denver, the office buzzed with post-gala emails, press mentions, and calls from new investors. But I moved through it all with a strange stillness. As if a storm had passed through me and left nothing but clarity behind. Around 10 p.m., I found myself curled on the couch in one of Caleb's oversized hoodies, nursing a glass of wine. Scrolling through photos from the night before. There I was, smiling, poised, shoulders squared, surrounded by people who saw me not as someone's daughter, someone's ex, someone's shadow, but as a leader. The notification popped up quietly. New email from Diane Hartley. Subject: dinner? Just the two of us. I stared at it for a full minute. Then I hit delete. Not out of anger, but because I finally understood that not every wound needed a reply. Some just needed distance. Later that night, Caleb joined me on the couch, his hand resting lightly over mine. "They seemed smaller," he said quietly, "than the people you remembered." I turned to him. "They were never big. I was just too close to see clearly." He nodded, then studied me. "And now?" "Now I feel clean," I said. Like I put something down that was never mine to carry. It was true. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad. I wasn't even triumphant. I was free. Weeks passed. Vanessa and Ethan remained distant dots in our corporate ecosystem. I'd receive the occasional forwarded memo or compliance update bearing Ethan's signature, but that was it. No calls. No confrontations. Just paperwork, clean, impersonal, distant. Exactly how I liked it. Diane, to her credit, tried again. Another email. Then a voicemail, the tone carefully rehearsed. As if she were still speaking to a boardroom and not her daughter. But the thing about rehearsed words is, they can't move real hearts. And mine was done being manipulated. So I didn't respond. Instead, I poured everything into Verdant. Caleb and I launched 2 new sustainable housing projects, hired a social impact director, and established a design mentorship program for young women from underserved communities. And somewhere between all that, I started sketching again. Not for work. Not for profit. For me. Landscapes. People. Abstract colors. Memories turned into shapes. One Sunday morning, Caleb found me in the sunroom, surrounded by half-filled sketchbooks and a half-drunk cup of tea. "You're smiling," he said, gently brushing charcoal from my cheek. "I am," I said. I forgot what it felt like to create just for the joy of it. He looked down at one of the sketches, a stylized outline of a woman standing alone in a field, hair wild, back turned to the viewer, head held high. "That her?" he asked softly. "No," I said. "That's me." He leaned down and kissed my forehead. "I'm proud of you," he whispered. A few months later, we were back in Aspen, not for business, but for ourselves. A quiet weekend. A break. We stood by the same glass walls where, months earlier, I had faced down the ghosts of my past in heels and emerald silk. Now I wore hiking boots and a messy braid. Caleb's jacket slung over my shoulders. "I've been thinking," I said, watching snow melt down the pine bark. "Maybe it wasn't betrayal that broke me." He turned to me. "No? Maybe it was love in the wrong hands," I said. "A lesson disguised as loss." He nodded slowly. "And what did it teach you?" "That no one can define my worth unless I let them." Silence fell between us again, but this time it wasn't heavy. It was whole. In the end, I didn't get revenge. I didn't ruin them. I didn't expose their lies to the world. I didn't even ask them to apologize. What I got was better. I built a life that was so rooted in truth, in love, in me, that their opinions no longer mattered. I loved a man who chose me not because I was shiny or impressive or strategic, but because he saw the whole of me, and stayed. I created a business with values I believed in. I learned how to be alone without being lonely. I let go of bitterness, not because they deserved peace, but because I did. And most of all, I stood in a room full of people who once dismissed me, and didn't need them to look impressed for me to feel powerful. Because power doesn't come from being admired. It comes from no longer needing to be.